Good evening. I call this regular meeting to order at 6:35 PM. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by incoming Commissioner Rodriguez. If you want to take a minute to collect yourself, that's okay. Okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Miss Adrian, please call the roll.
Commissioner Lotz,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
present.
Vice Chair Barantes,
Present.
Chair Dong,
Present.
Youth Ambassador Fan,
Present.
Youth Ambassador Zhao.
Present.
Are there any objections to the agenda order? Hearing none, the agenda order is approved. We will now have a few announcements by Community Services Assistant Director Matthew Morales-Stevens.
Live streamed on cable channel 3 and our online platforms. If you wish to address the Community Services Commission during tonight's meeting, we request that you please complete a speaker's card and hand it to the clerk, Adrian Franquez. When speaking, please state your name for the record. If you wish to be added to the distribution list or receive Community Services Commission agendas, please email your request to cscommission@sgch.org.
This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the Community Services Commission on items of interest that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Community Services Commission cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. Adrian, do we have any public comments for tonight's meeting?
We do not.
All right, thank you. The minutes are a record of the official actions taken at the Community Services Commission regular meeting on January 6, 2025. Matthew, do we have any public comments on this action item? Okay. The time for public comment on this item is now closed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the Community Services Commission regular meeting of January 6, 2025?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Adrian, can you take the vote?
Commissioner Lotz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Barantes,
Aye.
Chair Dong.
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, and 0 absent.
Great. So with housekeeping out of the way, we're moving on to discussion items. That's number 4. We're going to start off with the recognition of Miss Jackie Villalvazo, excuse me if I mispronounced that, who is the Recreation Coordinator. Staff and the Commission will recognize Ms. Jackie on her award from the California Parks and Recreation Society. She was selected as a recipient of the Professional Service Award of Excellence Rising Professional. Wonderful. Thank you. Is she here today? Mm-hmm. Okay. Great.
Award to add some context for those of you that may not be familiar with what this award means and kind of the significance of how excited we are and what a privilege it is to have someone that was selected for this award that's working for our agency. The 2024 California Parks and Recreation Society Professional and Service Award of Excellence Rising Professional recognizes individuals who have made a significant impact on CPRS excuse me, through less than 2 years, 10 years of dedicated service on district or section boards and event committees. Jackie exemplifies the spirit of leadership, commitment, and advancement in our profession. And some background on Jackie. She started with us as a recreation specialist. I think a few months into her working here, we lost one supervisor, and then we lost another supervisor. So we were extremely short-staffed, all while she was still trying to learn what our department did, what she was supposed to be doing, right? So those kind of next line of people that are supposed to be there and providing guidance quickly disappeared. Then I was, of course, filling in those roles, and Jackie had to fend for herself to learn. I, of course, tried to provide as much guidance as possible, but that's obviously a less than ideal environment to try and learn and grow and learn your role and how you fit in with the organization. But she did it with no complaints, excelled quickly. We received nothing but positive feedback from contract cost instructors, from anyone that she was helping at the window. Nothing but extremely positive feedback. The times where we had to go back and forth and have some feedback and kind of find ways to work together, she's always willing to make those pivots and find ways to grow the program. Doesn't take things personally. Just realizes that, okay, the expectation is here. How are we going to rise to that and meet the needs of the community? And she really has stepped in a way that we weren't quite anticipating, right? We didn't expect that when we hired her that we would have to kind of figure everything out at the same time. I'm sure it was a shock for her. She was like, what did I get myself into? Here she is now standing in front of us, being selected for this fantastic award. In addition to recognition tonight, she'll also receive recognition at the CPRS conference in Sacramento. She'll receive recognition at our one of our upcoming city council meetings. And so I would just like to thank her for all of her hard work and
if you have any comments for us, now is the time for that, or if the commissioners will have any questions or any comments for her, we can also start that as well.
Yeah, just want to say thank you. It wouldn't be possible without the help of my new supervisor, or not new anymore, Anna Casillas. She's definitely helped a lot with my learning and improvement in this new role that I take. And then obviously the support of Matthew has been very, very helpful in the almost 2 years that I've been with the city. So also my staff are one of the people that helped me also grow in this profession as well. So thank you all.
Well, thank you so much for your service. I hope you stay with us for a very long time. I know it's been really hard to recruit good quality staff who stick around through the ups and downs. We have a lot every single year in terms of all the programs and all the events that are put together and all the changes and updates to the programs that we have. So to someone who can kind of get in there and just roll the punches is always needed. So hey, I congratulate you on receiving this award and eventually going to Sacramento. I hope you have fun when you're out there.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations to you. That's the CPRS is awesome. I've been as like an exhibitor before, and they have so much great content. I mean, talk about furthering your development to go and be able to sit in on so many great sessions. But yeah, we echo our appreciation for you, and congratulations on your award.
Thank you.
Adrian, do we have any public comments on this discussion item?
We do not.
Okay, the time for public comment on this item is now closed. Moving on to events and program updates. Staff will provide an update on the planning process for certain programs and events.
looking forward to have a programmatic announcement, and then we'll jump into
Hi, good evening, Chair,
Commissioners, my name is Anna Casillas. I'm one of the Recreation Supervisors. I'm here to highlight the sports program as well as the after-school program. So for sports, we are well underway in basketball season. We have 4 teams, so we have a varsity boys, varsity girls, JV boys, and JV girls team. So we have a total of 60 participants. Their record, so far we've been playing friendly games against other cities. So far the record is almost undefeated. We just have 1 loss with the varsity girls. And we're getting a chance to play in the tournament for our varsities, girls and boys. They're going to compete at the SMAF, so that's Southern California Athletic Municipal Federation. Their tournament for the San Gabriel Valley is happening in about 2 weeks, and so our teams are going to go and compete against other cities, and we're very excited to see how they do. So hopefully next time I'm here, I get to tell all about how they did. So that's been great. We've gotten a chance to play against other cities such as Duarte, Azusa, Burbank, South El Monte. So that's all new this year, playing more friendly cities that are nearby and just only competing in the SMAF tournament this year. So it's been a really great enhancement, and people really seem to like it. Our next season is going to be soccer. There's a slight discrepancy on the report. It should read April 6th through June 5th. We will have our boys and girls varsity teams, and our tryouts are coming up on March 25th and 27th. So we're eager to see the kind of turnout that we get for tryouts. So far, we've been getting a lot of phone calls and people enrolling to try out, so we're eager to see what the final tryout is. Switching gears, we're looking at the after-school program. So for this year, we have 4 sites. We have Coolidge, McKinley, Washington, and Wilson. Our program is for 1st through 5th graders. And we offer a variety of activities: homework time, arts and crafts, outdoor time, games, and of course, our monthly highlights. We've also been building this program. Every year is something new. This year we had a lot of enhancements. So some of that is listed there. We introduced a site cell phone. So this way parents can easily call our staff, get their kids without having to wait a lot of time at the gate. They can call if someone's going to be out of town or sick that day. We also got the ability to use 2 indoor facilities. So at Washington and at Wilson, we have indoor facilities. So we're very happy and excited to have that. The kids really love it. It's great, especially in some hotter weather. We also have our monthly highlights. So we started it part of last year, but we've been growing it. And this is a chance to kind of introduce STEAM to the kids, culinary, art. So some of the examples that we've done is we did a pen pal letter writing. So we have 4 sites. They all exchange letters with the other site, and they wrote back and forth. And this was great. It builds their writing skills. It builds a connection. This year, we're going to introduce a field trip where they get to meet their pen pals, and so it's going to be really great. Some of the other ones we've done is pennies on a foil boat. So that's engineering and science. We've done eggs and parachutes. So this is all hands-on fun activities that they also are learning some science behind it. Once in a while, we'll throw in, like, we had a National Tortilla Day, and we talked about fun facts about tortillas, and then we did Nacho Day. So we try to pull in different things so they're not getting the same kind of highlights every month and change it up. So they really seem to like it. We also added in a e-newsletter. So every month we recap with photos, what happened the past month, our student of the months, and then talk about our upcoming activities. So these are some of the enhancements that we've had in the last year or so for the after-school program. That's it for me. Do you have any questions?
Are there any, is there any communication for if we want to watch any of these games, for example, basketball games, or when the soccer is up? Or, yeah, just because I feel like I could invite my girls to see basketball.
Yeah, the games are public or they're open to the public when they play them, so we can definitely share their schedule. The SMAF tournaments tend to be open to the public as well. Those are in Glendora and I believe Azusa, so they are a little further out. But we did just have a game this past Saturday at Jefferson, so that was great. I got a chance to see it, and it was so wonderful to see our team play.
Do we have any communication also outside, for example, what happened with previous games or how the teams are doing, etc.?
Yeah, the running score so far is in the staff report. So the JV boys are 4-0, varsity's 5-0, JV is 4-0, and varsity girls are 3-1. We share these scores with the parents on a regular basis, but not typically with the public.
Are there any plans to share it in social media or something? Because aren't they part of the city as well?
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's something to consider, and we'll, especially if we go all the way in SMAF or get some wins under our belt, that'd be nice to share.
Thank you.
I know a lot of these programs are after school.
Yes.
But are you considering to have programs on the weekends?
That is an idea that I haven't considered before. Definitely something to look at. Right now, we're really trying to fill in that need for the after school when the kids are there. But that's definitely something to look at.
You mentioned side cell phones, and I think it's very interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about it?
Sure, yeah. Before, we didn't really have any cell phones, so it was hard sometimes, if they wanted to let us know, oh, I'm running a few minutes late. They had to go through our Ring Central app, and so sometimes that didn't work as well. Now we have cell phones for each site, and they have the number, and they're able to just patch on directly through. And then the staff can also put in, like, oh, this is Pat's mom, so I'm getting Pat ready. So this helps us even get them quicker to their parent and kid, and also give them a quick call if anyone's sick, and vice versa.
I'm curious, my daughter's preschool has very strict, like, how you can interact with the school, and I'm just curious, like, how your approach is to that from the perspective of a parent, right? Are they allowed to be involved at all if they show early, or, can they pick up early, this type of thing?
Oh, yeah. Our program, yes. So they're allowed to pick up whenever they want. They don't have to wait until the end of program at 5 p.m. So if they need to come at 3:30, that's totally fine. And again, that's when the cell phones really play a good part in it. We're ready. They call at 3:30. We're like, great, you're going home. One of our staff walks the kid to the gate, and they're all set. So ours is different in that way, and it has lots of flexibility.
But it sounds like parents are at the gate, right? So they're not allowed to come into the program.
Correct. All the schools have a closed campus, so we respect that, and they have to wait at the gate.
Got it. And that's for safety of the rest of the kids in the program.
Correct. It's for the safety of all the students.
Yeah.
Essentially, Anna was alluding to it, but it is a non-city call. It's at the district level to where they decide that all of the campuses are closed and everyone stays out and all of the programs stay inside of the gates.
How do we access the news e-letter that is sent out monthly? And like for more information, if we'd like to contact you or to give you any recommendations.
That's great. We can add your email, anyone who would like. We can send the monthly e-newsletter to you guys. That way you can access it. If you ever have any questions or great ideas you'd like to pass along, you can email me or call me. I'll pass it along to Matthew can share it. And so I welcome any suggestions. We're always looking to grow. Sometimes the staff comes up with great ideas. They're the one who came up with the field trip idea. Last year, they wanted to do a field trip. They came up with a lesson that supported it about learning about money and currency. Matthew and I talked it over, and then we got approval from the principal, and they were able to do it. So it's always great to get suggestions everywhere.
And how do you implement all these programs at the elementary schools and make sure everyone stays on a line? Because I know you have programs at 4 different sites.
I love that. That's a great question. We have our weekly staff meeting, so all our staff come together and we go over problems, highlights, things that are coming up, anything that needs to be taken care of or any important news. And then I also meet with the site leads once a month as well to help plan more programmatic things. So between those things, it helps keep everyone on the same page.
And just for some additional context, kind of tying the previous item and this item together, Jackie, who was just here, she's the one that directly oversees the sports program, so to kind of add a face to the topics that we talk about. And then Anna is directly oversees Jackie.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? No? Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So I guess, do we have any public or comments on the discussion item, Adrian? No?
Before we do that, we'll
Sure.
go ahead and just go over civic rec. And then
Oh, sure, okay, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so everything is for Civic Rec is through the internet. So whether it's through your phone or on a desktop or tablet, it works on all of those, and it is mobile responsive. So you don't need to worry about it looking wonky, if you will. You will notice on your phone, it'll come up with the mobile version, so it'll be a much more colorful version of what you would see online, which is what I'll be showing you today. It essentially gets rid of all the clutter and shrinks it down into something that's more palatable for a phone. But you'll still be able to do all of the same exact things that you would on the non-mobile version. So as far as the login, it's sangabrielcity.com. What was that? Yeah, I'm like, this is not working, right? Okay. And then it'll always redirect you right back to our Civic Rec page. So this is where all of our registrations will take place moving forward. So class registrations, facility rentals, and picnic rentals. All of these links up here will take you directly to our webpage, which will have more information on those. And then all of these tabs are where those classes would fall under. So if I click on youth programs, you'd be able to access all of these. You'd see all the dance classes that we offer. And then if I go to picnic reservations and I wanted to book something at Marshall, click on Marshall. There's a brief synopsis on what Marshall is. And then you have the two picnic areas. So the Marshall picnic area. Mailing in our office did a fantastic job of adding in these maps to make it nice and clear. It's not that we don't love helping them, but why make people go through extra steps when you can find everything in one location?
I was going to ask, do they have photos like on the ground level of the spot?
I think this one might, or is it this one? Anyone where she had a photo already, she added it in, where it was ground level. I don't think we had one on hand for Marshall, though.
Because I know for my son's birthday, we were kind of looking around places in San Gabriel. I forget the name of the place. It's where the San Gabriel, it's across the street from Luna's.
The adults. Grapevine?
Yeah,
Oh,
they had no pic, I didn't see any picture. I had to go on Yelp to find like
Okay.
pictures of the inside, so that's
Yeah.
the only reason I bring it up.
Yeah.
It's like some ground level pictures in there.
No, that's
It
great.
It looks nice, but I couldn't find it on our actual
Sure,
website.
sure.
so.
So that would be our facility rental page, which I'll get to in
Okay,
just one
okay.
second. It doesn't have photos, but that is a good point that we do need to add them on there. On our website, it does have like one photo of each section of the Grapevine, but we haven't implemented that for this platform, but that's an easy add-on. We can do that when we get back to the office tomorrow.
Yeah.
In terms of booking a rental, if I was logged in, I would see a calendar here. Actually, I guess I can log in for you, so you can see what it actually looks like. So the login for a public individual versus a private, or excuse me, a staff member will be a little bit different. So I created a personal account, so in that way it will look the same for us tonight. So any balances that show up will show up at the top, and then you can just go in and pay it really quickly. It looks like I submitted an application for the Smith Park Gabrielino picnic area. What happens is when you submit an application for either our facility rentals or our picnic rentals, a staff member has to approve it. Then you can go ahead and make a payment. You'll get an email back from staff saying, your application has been approved. Here's the link to pay. So again, much simpler than how we used to operate. Again, if I come back here and go to Marshall, which is where I was, Marshall picnic area.
What's the need for the approval? Sorry to cut you off.
Sure. So sometimes we'll get someone who wants to do filming, or they want to do like a large special event, and that's not something that we would do through this process. There's a completely different permitting process. So we like to be able to just vet it instead of, if we didn't approve it, then it would just add it automatically to the calendar, and then we wouldn't know until like the week before when staff are pulling a report. That way we can just get ahead of anything. So let's say I wanted to book for the 26th. I would just simply click on the date, start and end date, apply. Of course, it's not working right now. Barely see what is happening. Is it not bookable?
So right now, all of March and April, almost the weekends are full, reserved, Saturdays? Unavailable, great. All the Saturdays so far are available, except for the 26th already.
Did staff adjust things this morning?
I think because it looks like the first date, they're not matching. Because it looks like a time span.
Thank you. There we go. Sorry, you can tell it's completely different on my end, so I apologize. If I click add to cart, it'll come up here with the $80. I would simply click checkout. And then there's a couple prompts, so let's say there was 50 people. This is also another reason why we have it to where staff approve. Let's say I entered 100. This capacity is only 50, so then Mailing can respond to the person and be like, well, I don't think that this is the best location. Let's find a better alternative like Smith Park. So I would do 50, submit responses. And then instead of filling out the questionnaire and then going through a couple of different items, they would simply click this checkbox. Then they have to sign, save, and then each section they'll do the same thing. And then confirm waiver agreement. They'll see the total charges are 80, and it says pay later 80. So today would be 0. I would click review transaction, and then I would click complete if I wanted it to go all the way through, but I don't today.
In terms of the financing charges, is that passed along to the customer, or is
It
that
is.
absorbed by the city?
So if, what will happen is if I clicked complete transaction, it would bring me to, the online portal to where I would hard key everything in, and it would tell me that there's a convenience fee of 2.9%. So it's the same as what we already had before. It's just they have the ability to pay that online. So if someone came into our office with the card, they would still pay the 2.9%. This just saves them a trip into the office.
Do people still have the option of paying cash? if
They
come by,
could,
or
yep.
check?
So if they, if Mailing says, here's the link to pay, they could come into the office and pay with cash or check without a problem. So again, this is what people are greeted with. It shows them how to create an account. Once they've created an account, how to register for a class. And then it just has the note about the 2.9% processing fee that it'll show up as a convenience fee. And then should they wish to pay in person and avoid that fee, they could do so. Let's see. Say I wanted to go to an adult dance class, and I wanted to click on here. It will have all of the information. So all of the description, the location, time. If I was a resident, this is the fee. Non-resident, this is the fee. And then it's as easy as clicking and adding to cart. Now, if I was the right age, then it would allow me. And then all of your cart would just be up here and then check out. Let's see. If I wanted to go to facility rentals, again, this is the Grapevine. We really only rent out this one. We do sometimes rent out the community recreation center, but it is not at the level to where we'd be like, yes, host your wedding at the community recreation center. So we just don't have it on here. If someone has a small meeting that they want to do, we'll handle that with them separately, but we really want them to see it before they book. And then if someone wants to book this, they would go through that same process. It's a little bit more lengthy because I have to input their event time, setup time, and cleanup time, and then add each one to the cart. And then staff will go ahead and approve it. They'll add in the supervision fees. They'll send everything back to them. The upside of this portal as well is that they can upload any documents. So we provide proof of security, proof of bartender, proof of special event insurance. So rather than having to email staff back and forth, they can just log onto the portal and upload all of the documents. Now, of course, if they don't know how to do that or don't want to, they can still email staff and staff will upload it for them. But ideally, this is a one-stop shop for the customer. They can make their final payment. They can make incremental payments if they really chose to do so. They can pull up receipts if they're like, oh, did I pay this? And that receipt, even if they paid in person, will still show up on their online account. Anytime that there is new things added, it would be here. So you can see staff are getting ready for spring, which will actually segue into our next discussion. So the system will allow us to do a couple of things. It will allow us to add program periods, and that could mean that we have a whole set of spring classes. So all of our contract classes will start registration March 7th. So our program period, the registration period starts Monday the 7th, or excuse me, the 10th. So anything that we input under spring 2025 will automatically have the same parameters. We can set another one that is for aquatics spring 2025, and it'll allow everyone to register at the same time. What this new system, or really no other system, has the ability to do is to say, you can register for one cycle at a time, and that's it. So we have, imagining that this is summer, where we typically have 5 cycles, historically we've allowed one family or person to register for one cycle at a time. So if you register for cycle 1, you won't be able to register for cycle 2 if there's availability until that Friday of your last class, once your class is completed, which you could register at the pool or you could register at our office. The difference with allowing online, and I will say every year for aquatics, we've had in-person and over-the-phone registration. There was no online option. In the past, we've done that for day camp. When we added the 2.9, when the citywide fee added for 2.9%, we had to take it off of online just because the system wouldn't allow it. But now summer camp will be back online and in person, and we'll get into that in just a second. But in terms of aquatics, it's a bit more of a balance game. So if we move it to online and in person, you lose the ability to limit to one cycle per person until they've finished. So essentially, if someone wants to register for all 5 cycles at the same time, they could do so. Alternatively, we could have staggered registration dates. So if you wanted to release cycles 1 and 2 at a particular time frame, and then cycles 3 through 5, you could also do that. So you could kind of have 2 options for people to snag the cycles. But again, you're going to run into the same thing, to where if you only release 2 cycles at the same time, someone could snag both cycles at the same time. It has the potential to not be as dispersed amongst the people who are interested. At the same token, people don't have to wait in line. They don't have to go through all of the headache of the in-person component. Because yes, we've allowed over-the-phone registration, but most people end up coming in person. So with that, I'll turn it back to the commission in just a moment to discuss that further. After I go through the summer camp registration. So we tried summer camp registration, I think it was actually prior to COVID. We did online registration and in person, and it was sold out within the same day. There were no complaints. Everyone loved the online registration process. They paid their deposit, and they paid their remaining balance the Thursday prior. They had all of their information that they needed. It worked out perfect for them. So the plan moving forward for summer camp would be to do the same thing. There would be in-person and online registration only, no over-the-phone registration. So just those two options. They will be able to get their handbook once they register. They'll be able to get all of their waivers signed. So instead of having to turn back in paperwork, a lot of it will be done, most of it will be done via Civic Rec at the time of registration. They'll be able to tell us their t-shirt size, all of that good stuff at the time of registration. So then it's less back and forth. The major change moving forward with both classes, summer camp, and aquatics registration is that there will no longer be over-the-phone registration. So it's for a number of reasons, one of which is because of waivers, right? So if you register over the phone, there's no way for us to get your signature on a waiver. If you register online, as you saw, it's the same for classes as a picnic or facility rental. You have to click to each one of those waivers and sign before you can complete your transaction. If you don't agree to that, then unfortunately you can't check out for that class. Whereas over the phone, staff would have to email them the receipt and kind of hope that they send it back, or we assign a staff member that says, your job is once a month to hound people down for these waivers, which isn't necessarily the best use of time or skill sets in our office. So for now, we have opted to not do the online registration, or excuse me, the over-the-phone registration. Additionally, it is less secure to do over-the-phone registration because staff are hard keying a credit card in. Versus when you're in person, we have the terminals where the customer is actually processing the transaction, or online, they're the ones hard keying that information in. So they're not handing, like we had in RecPro, where that you're handing someone's card in person, and then we're hard keying it in even if they did come in person. Or over the phone, we're having to then hard key that information in. So it's eliminating kind of any potential for things going awry or amiss at any point. So with that, those are all of the updates. I will turn it back to the commission. If you have any questions and any additional feedback on aquatics, we would be happy to help.
Well, I can just start off and say congratulations on getting the system in place before the summer season. This has been many years in the making. I know it's been very expensive for the city too, but I think it's well worth the effort and the expense because we have to move forward with registration technology, and this is the way to do it. And tying up staff's time with phone registration and, families' times waiting outside the door 2 hours before the thing opens up is also not a great use of everyone's limited resources. So this is wonderful. I look forward to registering for maybe not the swim lessons, but certainly summer camp this year. And with that, I'll just hold the rest of my comments and questions in case any of the other commissioners have some feedback initially.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Obviously, you're expecting overwhelming enrollment in aquatics. It usually sells out, right? So what is the anticipated experience? Like, it's going to be online. It's going to be in 5 minutes, or
Yeah,
what are
so
we thinking?
Both summer camp and aquatics will have resident priority. So it'll have, let's say, today was a registration, for example, of aquatics for residents, and then a week from now it would be open up for non-residents. So at least we'd be able to do that. So regardless of what happens, and unless the commission thinks otherwise, the residents would have the priority. In terms of how quick it fills up, we are not certain. I will say aquatics last summer didn't fill up as quickly as we were thinking it would. We did make some changes as far as timing, so that may have had something to do with it. We are reverting back to our prior method of scheduling, so that might change things a little. But typically what we see is that tadpoles, guppies, and jellyfish are the first ones to go, and then anything level 2 and above usually takes another week or two to fill up. So unfortunately, I don't have the perfect answer to your question, but that's...
No, it's just in combination with the new system, we're course, we're expecting the system to hold up, but like probably parents should expect to be there like when it goes online to try to actually secure a spot.
I should note as well, and I apologize for not mentioning it in my statements earlier, both summer camp and spring and summer aquatics registration will take place at 5:30. The goal is to allow, working parents hopefully some time to either stay a little bit after work or, make it home in time to log on instead of having to, take off the morning of your day and either, be ready to log in because, if you're working at an office, you're either there at 8 or 9 a.m., which is typically when registration has started.
Right. And sorry, the date, and you just mentioned 5:30, but the date for the rollout is?
Yeah, so the spring registration is still TBD based off of today's discussion.
Okay.
As far as summer camp registration, that is scheduled for April 10th at 5:30.
Okay.
And that'll be open for 2 hours. 5:30 to 7:30 will be in person, and then 5:30 onward will be online. And then actually for spring registration, it is tentatively scheduled for March 26th at 5:30.
Great. And is there a need to verify that you are a resident, and what is the process?
Yeah, so we historically, when we've required San Gabriel residency for the primary registration date, we haven't checked additional documentation.
Honor system.
We've just gone on the honor system.
Got it.
So potentially someone could, enter in some, their family member's address, for example.
Yeah. Oh, so you make them put your address to show that you're from San Gabriel?
Correct.
Got it. Cool.
So just a couple of things in terms of the queuing system. So say there is an overwhelming demand for the Yuppies swim program, and instead of lining up in front of the recreation center, which they've done in the past, can you queue online? What does that look like?
As far as queuing, Adrian came up with a great, I think we call it the DMV process, to where you kind of get a number to come back at a designated time slot. So if you're registering in person, we would implement that same thing. People responded much better to that than just waiting in line until your time comes. So essentially, if registration opens at 5:30 and there's 50 people waiting in line, and we know that we can handle 15 people in 15 minutes, for example, then we would know that the numbers 1 through 15, you will be helped between 5:30 and 5:45. 16 through 30, you'd be helped at 5:45 to 6, and then so on and so forth. That way they know to come back during that time slot. But as far as the online individuals, they would just keep going until the system will be able to handle it.
Okay, so if you log in at 4:30, you would hold your spot? You'd be first in line? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so once you add it to the cart, you've taken that spot. So if you could log in at 5:15 and be ready with, on the page, if, you could get all the way up to this point and click here, be ready to click, my name, and then add to cart as soon as it's ready, right? It may require a refresh, right? Just because it's internet-based. But otherwise, that would be the way that you could be kind of on the go.
Right.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does, but in terms of equity, though, right, we're talking about like the mobile warriors, who,
Right, right.
it's like Taylor Swift tickets, it's like, how do you control how early someone gets in line? Do we want to control that?
The only way that the system will allow is it will release the registration at 5:30, and that's all that we could control online. The system doesn't allow like a certain number of people on at the same time. It won't, during the setup process, we have to tell them, or they request that any large registrations like this one, we have to notify them in advance to make sure that their system can handle the large influx, so that you don't end up with the Ticketmaster instance with Taylor Swift, to where the system's shutting down and then everyone's upset. So again, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if somebody were to log in at 7 a.m. in the morning and just, say, I want to take a spot in the swim class, then they've already taken the spot
Oh,
without
I-
even having to pay for it,
I see your
right?
question. No.
No,
So
okay,
it won't
can't.
allow them to hold the spot until registration opens at 5:30. So if they won't even be able to add it to the cart. So like if I go into.
So there's no queuing system essentially before
Correct.
5:30?
Yeah, so if I add it in baby ballet, registration doesn't open till Monday. Let's see, hopefully this person is, no, let me try to find one that this child is registered for. I don't know how old this person is. Yeah, so it would show registration hasn't started, but if I try to add it, it'll tell me registration hasn't started, I can't even add it to the cart. So I can be on this page ready to add to cart, but until that 5:30 time slot hits, no one will be able to add it.
Okay. And I think,
Is the next page after you add to cart when you're signing the waivers?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you'll get your spot once you add to cart, so that waiver part, you can read it,
can
some
take
people
your
like to
time.
read and take your time. Okay. Okay.
I think one of the questions you posed was, does it make sense to have staggered registration dates? And I think that it does, for a couple of reasons. One is that it could be that, again, the mobile warrior, they are trying to snag all the spots for the entire summer, but that same person might have something that comes up, and then all of a sudden, you're losing, that one family is taking up 5 cycles, right? So it's not really fair, and also it's extra work for the staff. So if we stagger it, then maybe that family will think twice about registering. They'll register for the first 2 cycles, and then by the time the second cycle is nearly finished, then they can have a better sense of what their summer looks like, and then register for the next 2, as opposed to filling up all 5 slots at once.
Right.
And then changing their minds about it, So I think for that reason, one of the reasons is.
True.
And also, from equity standpoint, sometimes, things come up, you're not available on April 10th at 5:30, right? But you might be available in June 10th at 5:30, and so, you'll have a chance to get in the queue to register. So,
Yeah, you don't only have one chance per year. Yeah, that makes sense.
the entire summer.
Theoretically, this could all fill up instantly online. Does that take away from those who are trying to register in person?
Correct. So if there are 15 people waiting in line still, but everything's filled up online, then unfortunately those 15 people wouldn't be able to be served.
Yeah, that's gonna be,
Yeah.
that's gonna be contentious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to avoid that other than if you somehow have a back-end way of seeing how many people are in line and blocking that, but you don't know what they're registering for, right? So-
Right. It would be after hours, so if they're in line, then we know for sure they're registering for aquatics. But yeah, we wouldn't know what level or anything like that they're
Right.
registering for. Historically, Adrienne has had a fantastic system. She is the registration queen and has kind of foolproofed this, but obviously now that we're moving things online, that changes things. She's had, a poster, and then she'll scratch off, which class or level is filled. So then anyone waiting in line would know, well, okay, I'm not going to wait in line anymore if it's already full. In this case, I would anticipate that it's going to fill up quicker than we could necessarily do that, right, and update it in real time.
I guess the best you can do then is to notify people that are in line that there is also an online option and,
Sure.
that it could be booked up, so you could also just try using your phone
True.
instead,
Okay.
right? Because as long as people in line know that there is a potential path for prioritization online.
Is there an option to do staggering registration days of in-person and online? Like certain days will be for in-person and certain days will be online. Like there will be limited spots for in-person and limited spots for online. Because I think it's definitely very unfair because if you've been waiting for 30 minutes and then all the spots are taken up and then you just wasted all this time for no reason. So is there an option to do that?
We could. I'm not coming up with anything immediately that would prevent us from doing that.
It just takes the convenience away. it's a great idea. I just think that if I were a parent and I wanted to sign my kid up, I would just do whatever came first. So if we did both at the same time, it would be more convenient for me to just stay home and register online. But knowing that it's probably going to get all booked up in person, then I'm right back to doing it in person. Like, I would just go do that. You see what I mean? So it would funnel me away from the convenience of the whole system back to being in person. That's my perspective. Yeah.
I get that, but I don't know, for my parents specifically, they're like Asian, they're not very familiar with the internet, so they prefer doing things like in person. So like, they like to go sign up for classes in person, they like to go like do registration and like sign paper in person, so they don't really like using like online systems.
And they rely on you probably for that, right? Yeah.
Well, you just answered one of my questions, which is why do we still have in-person registration? It's for people who feel more comfortable lining up. I think it would logistically might be hard to shut down the system because that's what you're proposing, right? It was we would have online registration first, or maybe in-person registration first, and then you would switch to online, and then switch back to in-person. But we would have to shut down the online system for the day that you have in person. So I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, it's possible. It can get messy because there's a few buttons that you have to click in order for it to show online and not allow people to register online. And it would be you'd be doing it almost class by class. So it could be where it's, there is a registration in person first and then online, but then again, it does kind of beg the question, will it lead to the same situation or scenario that you were mentioning? But to revert back and forth wouldn't necessarily be an option.
So right now, are you guys just going to open it online and that's it? Or are you guys still trying to think out how to do it
Yeah, so
fairly?
we're still thinking out kind of what would be best for the community, given what our system can do and what parameters are set forth. So if the commission kind of unanimously agrees that in-person only is the best way, we would certainly take that into account. But if on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you thought it was only online, then we would take that.
Yeah,
as
being
well.
IT, this is great for me, but, not everyone is computer savvy enough to do this. But I want to say last summer, the system you guys had I had no problem with it. I think it was the numbering system, you just showed up or something. It was easy for me. I, got in, I think I was 2 or something, but I don't see that being a problem doing it that way because I didn't experience an issue. I don't know if you guys heard, any issues on that sense, but it was a lot better than I'm hearing people get up at 6 a.m. and start making the line.
Yeah.
And no one got time for that. So whatever system you guys had last summer was great. And, if we can't make this work fairly for everyone, then I think that would be the best option.
And I think that one that you're talking about was the register to register system.
The
right?
first register, and then, So that worked great.
People were still standing in line, waiting, even with the register system. So like an hour beforehand, I think there were still families.
You were able to do it online?
Yeah, so
Even if the online stuff was still available, people still came in person, though, an hour in advance. I guess we're trying to make it easier for families so that they don't have to wait in line an hour before registration opens.
I'm trying to remember how I did it, but it was online, right, to register?
Yes, so we
So why
had
couldn't
3
they do
different
that?
registration dates.
Uh-huh.
It was the spring swim, and then it was summer camp. So then by the time, and that was before swim registration for summer. So by swim registration, we worked out the kinks with that. So that was a lot smoother. That was kind of like the DMV system, where we're just calling people up, but everyone had a time slot. And then for summer camp registration, it was the numbering system. So people lined up to get their number, and then they returned at the time.
Yeah, so that was the long line in advance of the 5:30 registration, whereas the one that you're referring to was you register for your 15-minute time slot in advance, days or weeks in advance, and then you arrive at that time slot, and then you're assisted, and then you go on.
Because that was super easy, so I was wondering, like, why wouldn't people do that instead of going in person?
Well, we do have this fancy new technology, so.
Well, not too fancy, because
No.
mark people, oh, they're already registered, we can't, re-register, so. So yeah, that system worked fine, I think. I mean, unless we can come up with something else, right now, it's gonna be open to anyone. And just like Matthew said, anyone can register as much as they want.
In terms of
Swim classes.
the swim
Like all
classes?
the cycles, right?
No, so that's what we're talking about, whether or not we want to.
I don't think so. I don't think we want, I don't think we should do it online. I think we should do it how we did it that way. I think it was more fair, but
Well,
I don't know.
I think the best compromise for in-person and online, and then I will address the multiple applications after. The best compromise is still all open at the same time, but there's a certain percentage only for walk-ins, for lining up. So like, let's say 30%, 25% will be left just for people who would want to line up. Because what will happen is it becomes two-pronged, right? One is we are now helping everyone and promote the long-term longevity of the online process because, hey, you know what, it'll be actually more convenient. But if you prefer it, we actually have slots for those people who would still want to do in person. Now, how we can do dedupe,
And can I just ask, are you referring to swim or summer camp?
actually any. It would be any.
Because swim, there are different classes. Whereas summer camp, you can do something like that because you can just say, oh, hold 20 spots available for summer camp. But for swim, there's the yuppie, there's the guppy, there's the, so are you saying?
You could probably just do it across the board.
For me, it doesn't matter what program it is because it could be the same. There would be people who would want to go online and there would be people who would line up for it. So, because I'm looking at it objectively in terms of how the process is, because we can't be subjective of what the process is. It would have to be standard for it to be efficient. So now I know that there could be, for example, for aquatics, that you could have people applying for multiple classes, right? And I think that's where the dedupe can happen. And it could also help having it in the system. For example, like let's say everyone just uses their ID card, state-issued ID. So that we can use it to match if they're an actual resident of San Gabriel or not, or you could use that as a dedupe whether this person applied again or not. It's not super foolproof, but it's a good filter. So now it can somewhat avoid people having to sign up for those multiple classes. I mean, we can't make everyone happy. We'd have to create a certain standard. So, and the only way that we could do it is to make it across the board. And that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I guess in terms of the swim, if we say, let's leave 20 spots open, which 20 spots do we leave open? Which classes?
Per class. I mean, for example, if it's multiple classes, if it's 20 slots, we do 15 and 5. 15 online, 5 lineup. We do that for each.
So just like on a percentage basis of each class. So if there's 4 classes at different age groups, you just do the same percentage held for each one for walk-ins. And I think I agree. And I think it's almost, even if it's only transitionary, like, is that a word? If it's only for the transition to now becoming online, I just think about showing up in person and being like, because, you couldn't necessarily do that. So if you have the ability on the back end from 5:30 to 7:30 is the registration time in person, right? And then just reopen everything at 7:30 or the next day. I like it. I think it's a good idea.
So would you stop someone else from registering more than one cycle? If they did it online and, say, the spouse went in person or something? Or...
It would be within their account, hypothetically. Now, if they make a separate account under a different email, then that would be a way to evade the system as well. which hopefully no one's listening to that, but, and then in terms of, the percentage, within each course, we wouldn't be able to set this many for in-person and this many for online. The system doesn't allow for that. It just says, do you want to allow online registration, yes or no? And if your cap is 20 and they're all taken online, it's not going to stop it at a certain cap. The only way around that would be to create like a secondary course where one is online and one is in person, which we have done for several years to allow for the credit card processing fee for our contract classes. I will say it has been a less than ideal situation because then you have two different rosters. It can get a little messy very quickly. Classes typically don't have a huge enrollment per class, so it's been feasible. But in terms of trying to do a whole mapping of classes for aquatics, especially in summer, to try and create like two courses for one class would be quite difficult.
There's not an option to say this class has 15 spots and then later go back and bump that to 20?
We can certainly do that, yes. So if you are separating the dates, so if you had, in-person registration first, we could cap it at 15 as the max. And then you had online registration the week later, staff can go back in and add an additional 5 to each of them and click open online for each course.
Yeah.
And then those remaining 5 for each would be available to those online participants.
So then it would become manual entry for the staff.
Correct.
Because those who were at the same time in person would just have to give their info, but they wouldn't actually be able to pay at that time then because it would be blocked.
Sorry, what was your question again?
I'm just thinking it through. Like if you blocked off 5 for in person, then you would only allow 15. They fill up online immediately. But for the 5 you blocked for those in person, you wouldn't be able to actually register them until later. So you'd have to take all their information in person,
Correct.
and they wouldn't be able to pay at that time.
Correct.
Tricky.
I think the key thing here will be the deduplication. Really making sure of something unique, not just an email address. Maybe the actual address, because it helps us also determine whether they're a resident or not. And the resident, for example, or the address that's in a specific state-issued ID. And it'll help because at least, someone can still hack the system, but it's still a good filter.
Sure. So we can certainly implement those in person, but the system wouldn't be able to, do any of those checks online because it'll just take whatever address you input. It'll tell you if it's not, if someone's trying to make up an address, it won't accept it. But if, they're using their neighbor's address that happens to be in San Gabriel, but they're in Alhambra type of situation, it would take that online.
And we don't have a database to check that on, right?
No, the only way for the system to be set up that way is a lot more money. So if we wanted to pay a few extra thousand, then we could have a database run. Civic Rec would input each individual address. We have it set up by zip code. Other agencies may have paid the additional cost. I can't imagine that there would have been others, but it is very possible. But it comes with a pretty high ticket cost at the time of setup.
This is a bit of a humorous question, but is it guaranteed to know how to swim after the lessons? Because it can track youth like myself who don't know how to swim, being more eager to take the course.
Yeah, so it's actually not unlikely or uncommon for level 1 and above and below to have to retake the Learn to Swim class because there is a pretty rigorous checklist that you have to meet every single checkbox in order to move to level 2. So will you have a better grasp on swimming and how to do so safely? Yes, but unless you have, there's no guarantee that by the end of that 2-week cycle that you will be an expert swimmer or be confident at swimming. But it is guaranteed that you will be taught kind of
the same as everyone else. But everyone, of course, learns at a different pace. So some people I've seen take it once. Some people I've seen have to take level 1 3 or 4 times before they move to level 2.
So in terms of the decision point tonight, because we, realistically, we wouldn't be able to implement the technology, or they're more able to do the background check or verification, I guess, the address verification, because it would have to go through city council to probably approve that or something like that, right? There's a budget allocation question there. So in terms of the discussion tonight and approval, are we trying to vote on whether or not we want the online system to open up at the same time as the in-person?
Yeah, so option 1 would be online only, option 2 would be in-person only, and then 3 would be the hybrid, which is kind of what our initial recommendation was, which was in-person and online. And then within those, do you agree with a staggered release? Meaning, the first 2 cycles open up at one time, and then the next 3 open up at a later date? Or does it all open at the same time? It is really the direction that we're looking for. Kind of type of registration, and then when are we opening registration?
Is there any way you can mandate like proof of residency, like with mail or parents' ID?
We could for in-person, but that wouldn't assist us for the online component.
Can the online send a picture or like some type of evidence, and then they have to get approved?
That would be something that would have to be done prior to the registration date, not something that would be able to be done at the time of registration. Also, there would be no way for the system to block it, to where, let's say you came into the office, I verified your proof of residency, but then Youth Ambassador Al made up some address, or maybe, she very much lives in San Gabriel, but she did not verify, she would still be able to register, just because her address says San Gabriel.
I wanted to ask you, just clarify, you can only register during a certain period of time, right? Like from 5:30 to 7:30, or is it after that certain day, it'll just be open until all the spots are taken?
So yes and no. So for in-person registration, the plan would be to have that 2-hour window from 5:30 to 7:30. And then after that, it would be just during normal business hours, so Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. And then let's say that evening, in-person registration ends at 7:30, you could still register at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. The online system's open 24/7.
So I guess, do we want to vote by motion?
Sure.
Or-
I think that actually might be the cleanest way to do it. So if someone wants to make a motion kind of outlining what their recommendation would be, that would be fabulous.
Well, let's split into 2 then, the way that you suggested. So the first motion would be, I motion to approve the hybrid system, which is opening up online registration at the same time as in-person, just to see how it goes for this summer. And then we can tweak it based on our experience.
Yeah, I second the motion.
So I'll take the vote. Commissioner Lotz,
I approve.
Commissioner Rodriguez, Vice Chair Barantes,
Aye.
Chair Dong.
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 abstentions.
And so for this,
May I'm not fully understanding the cycle, so do you mind just
Oh, of
quickly
course.
telling me what a cycle is?
Sure.
Yeah.
So a cycle either is Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 weeks, or it is Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. And the reason and the date change is usually the time difference. I don't know the time off the top of my head, but typically the Monday through Friday is a shorter class than the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Typically the level 2s and above would be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a longer period of time because an older child typically has the attention span to be able to handle that, whereas a level 1 and below would typically be a Monday through Friday for a shorter period of time because usually they're either exhausted or bored after, half an hour time slot.
And so the idea is that if a parent were to book all the cycles, it would be for starting at 0 and going through all of the advancements, or just booking all of the tadpoles for all the cycles?
Correct. So if
I see.
yeah.
So they'll definitely move up, hopefully then.
Correct. So, yeah, so if typically our level, our tadpoles and guppies, you're in that the whole summer.
Yeah.
So even if you're not really advancing, unless you transition age-wise from guppies to tadpoles, that would be a reason. But otherwise, you're staying in those all summer. But let's say you register cycle 1 for level 1, you do have the potential to pass level 1 after that one cycle, and then you would then qualify for level 2. So if you registered for level 2 in cycle 2, or excuse me, level 1 for cycle 2 after you've just passed it, we would then make the transfer from level 1 to level 2. But only if space is available.
Yeah. I get it. So we're trying to prevent parents from just booking them all in the event that they don't pass, or just because keep going all summer long. I understand. Okay.
So in terms of the second motion, a motion to stagger the cycles are we talking about both the swim classes and the summer? Well, I guess the swim classes, this would be the staggering, right?
Sorry, can I just have one clarification? How long do we finalize the registrations before they are, how long is the distance from the duration from the registration to the classes? And the reason why I ask, because of, is it possible for us to put a safeguard after the registration that, for example, hey, if your child has been seen to have registered in the first cycle, that they're not allowed to be joining the second cycle?
We could. That has definitely been something that staff have discussed. But that would require staff going through very carefully to be sure that they're not seeing duplicates. So if little Johnny was registered for cycle 1 and cycle 2 for the same level, staff would then have to then call and remove them from the list, explain to them the situation. So not only would they have to verify, they would also have to communicate that to the customer. Because what we would not want to do is to just withdraw them and then they show up to class and like, oh, well, I registered, but not realizing that we pulled them from the roster. So typically when we don't like to assume that a customer, even if they've done something against our policy, let's say we notified them that you can only register for one cycle at a time, follow the rules type of thing, and then they break the rules. Technically, we should just be able to withdraw them and they should know what they've done. But we like to provide the level of service that is kind of above and beyond just you're yanked and shame on you, right? To really provide that personalized service so they don't make the mistake again, because it is possible that they did it by accident or didn't read what was at the top.
I'm sure you guys don't want to hear their wrath either.
That is fair.
So does anyone want to second the motion, or do we have a different motion on the table?
Sorry,
Want to stagger?
could we repeat the motion, please, again?
The motion is to stagger the cycles for swim registration this summer.
Yeah, I second.
Adrian, can we take the vote?
Yes. Commissioner Lotz?
This is for cycle 1 and 2 in the first stagger, 3, 4, 5 in the second.
That's what was initially proposed. If the commission would like to break it up,
one cycle at a time, you could do that. It can become somewhat cumbersome for the parents, but it would allow a total of 5 opportunities for someone to register if you chose to do that.
Cumbersome would mean they might not jump back on.
That's fair.
I'm sorry, I interjected. I like the 2 personally. I don't know what you guys think about doing more than 2 cycles. Were you suggesting that you do? I wasn't following.
So if we do the 2 cycles, the parents can sign up for both cycles.
Potentially, they could.
I mean, I don't think there's any foolproof way to not have them sign in if they want to. It's just now I'm looking at the efficiency of the staff and the time being spent on it. If someone would really want to sign in, they will have to figure out, because we don't have a dedupe system right now. So which means if someone really wants to hack the system, they can. Now the question is, again, how would it affect the staff if we would have more time to do the registration or not? So, I mean, if we'd put it to a vote, I won't. I'd rather, it doesn't matter whether it's staggered or not. I don't think it really makes a difference. What would be the difference are the people behind it running the registration. So I would be a no for staggering.
So it sounds like the motion was for staggering 2 and 1 set of, my apologies. Cycle 1 and cycle 2 would open at one time for registration, and then cycles 3 through 5 would open on another registration date. Both would have a resident registration date and then a non-resident. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it now. The resident registration date will be online and in person. The non-resident would be in person only. Or excuse me, I apologize, not in person only. They would be online or in person during normal business hours. I apologize. So whereas the residents, the first registration date for them would be, let's say, June 1st at 5:30 p.m., all of the non-residents would have to register at 9 a.m. on that very first business day of registration. So we're not extending business hours for non-residents. It would just be for the residents.
Do we want to make non-residents come in person instead?
You could do that. I will say it will add staff time in person. I don't know that it will necessarily be a huge deterrent for people.
I was thinking it might open up for more residents to sign up if the non-residents aren't taking up the spots.
Yeah.
Make them work a little bit for it.
Sure.
But I understand the staff will have more work, but I don't know. Thinking of the residents first, especially for swim, since that's the most popular.
Yeah.
I think if there was some way where we could make it easier, but the issue is that you could still lie, right? Because you can put in really any address.
You could. We haven't seen it happen very frequently in any other program that we've done. Like, for example, summer camp, like we do have some non-residents that utilize it. It's less and less every year, but that they wait in line with everyone else. We haven't really seen where people are making up addresses. I use it as an example because it 100% could happen. Aquatics is always a different beast, but historically we haven't seen it.
My only concern would be if there wasn't enough interest in the swim programs, right? Then we wouldn't be able to fill up the classes, which would also be not ideal. But in this case, it's always full, even last
Typically,
summer,
yes.
typically. So if we could save some spots for residents, that would be great. I'm indifferent as to whether or not we want non-residents to show up in person. I just think that someone's just going to lie and put in the wrong, like a San Gabriel address just to get away from having to show up in person.
Yeah, it doesn't really help prevent the issue. Yeah. I think the only reason to do 2 different rounds, like, cycle 1 and 2, and then 3, 4, 5, would be to give parents 2 opportunities to sign up, not necessarily to prevent other people. That's the way I think about it, like, I missed my first date, I get a second shot.
Yeah, I'm fine with the staggering, but I still think the non-residents should come in person.
So should we vote on that separately?
Yeah, separate votes.
Staggering, and then,
So Adrian can take the vote on
the staggering cycles, and then if there's further discussion about any of the remaining components, then we'll tackle those.
Okay.
Commissioner Lotz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Nay.
Vice Chair Barantes, Chair Dong.
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 abstentions.
One nay.
One nay.
One nay.
Oh, sorry. It's like. So motion passed by a vote of 3 ayes, 1 nay, and 0 abstentions.
So now the question is, do we want the non-residents to show up in person
Only.
only?
And that's throughout the entire summer. Okay.
Yeah, because all the cycles get filled up. I mean, it's not cycle 5 where it's, empty. They all get filled up, so I think it should be all summer.
Do you want to pose the motion?
Oh, what's the wording? A motion for non-residents to register in person for aquatics.
I second that motion.
Okay, I'll take the vote. Commissioner Lotz,
Nay.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Barantes,
Aye.
Chair Dong.
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 3 ayes, 1 nay, and 0 abstentions.
Perfect. Are there any additional questions on civic rec or registration before I close this out?
Well, so feedback on this and how this all works out. When do you expect the feedback to be available?
Sure. So the first registration will be for spring aquatics, which will be at the end of March. Well, I guess the end of this month. So that at our April meeting, we should have feedback for you. And then that'll prepare us for summer camp and summer swim registration. I will say that by the April meeting, all of the marketing will be getting pushed out based off of this information tonight. So any changes would be kind of after everything has happened for summer. Because we want to make sure that everyone knows, okay, this is the new registration software, create your account now. You can register in person or online versus kind of what we've done historically. That way there's no a reduced amount of confusion or people upset because of the change in process.
Just one more question regarding the process. And I know I did not see it on the requirements document, but how are we managing database, like signups or any analytics behind it? Just so we have better insight of how many attended or how fast did it fill up or, all of these things.
Sure. So I will be fully transparent and say I have not looked to see what type of reporting it pulls. It pulls a lot more than our old system, but I don't know if it'll break it down as far as like how many registrations were brought in at a particular time frame. So we'll have to look and see. I would imagine it does. I know our old system would tell you like per course what time people registered, but I don't know how the information will be built out in this system. But we can certainly break down very easily like who registered in person and who registered online, and then kind of the date frame that they registered as well. So if everything was filled up on day one, we would know that simply just because it's full. But also the reports would tell us as well.
Oh, so at least we can capture that data, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, put survey links.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll help.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And that is one of the upsides of the system is if we create a survey, we can bake it into the registration. So then at the close of their class or even midway through the class, they'll get an email prompt that says, take our survey, and then we'll get all that feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Also, in this section, I think because the last meeting was canceled for lack of a quorum, the public information officer was had a presentation available to show us. Are we,
Yes.
we're not doing that presentation today,
No, and
obviously, right?
I
Okay.
apologize. I had it on both of our calendars, and we both dropped it, so I apologize. I will make sure that it makes it on for the April meeting.
For the April meeting, okay, great. Anything else in this section? Okay, okay, so now we are moving on to public comments on this item. Adrian, do we have any?
We do not.
Okay, so the time for public comment on this item is now closed. Section C is the discussion of a work plan. Commission members will discuss the items in the work plan. I'll open it up for discussion.
Being that it's already 8 PM, I have nothing.
Actually, based on the work plan, I know we had a discussion on the list that, so that we can decide on what programs to do for the different age groups. Matt was able to send us the list, but probably maybe we could just email it. Oh, no, can we email it to the rest of the commissioners for us to review so that we can? Because I know we have the site now to refer to as well. Maybe we could do that and maybe review so that our next meeting we can discuss if there's any other programs that we would want to propose. I don't think so. I think it should be, but I think this is sufficient enough. It's just pretty much eyeballing if you look at the last, thank you for providing this, Matthew.
No problem.
So,
We're talking about just the classes that are available?
Uh-huh. So because it's pretty much a good starter for us to understand what has been running, what we've done, and then pretty much give us an idea what we can brainstorm on.
These classes are generally the same kind of rotation every year?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. If something isn't operating successfully, then we kind of give them 1 or 2 sessions to hopefully increase numbers. If it doesn't, then we remove the class from our offerings.
Okay.
So I guess just for the minutes, so 2 things, if we can have the PI presentation next time, and then second, to have the data that's being discussed distributed. Oh, here, okay. So we just want to table it then for the next meeting?
Yeah, so just for us to be able to look at the data here and for us to be able to have an idea of what programs to propose for the age groups that we wanted to, that we discussed, that was outlined in the work plan.
Right, right.
Who would I need to talk to in terms of getting the listings for, children that are autistic and on the spectrum, to just see what's going on with that? Like if any movement's been doing, because I've mentioned it a few times, but there's nothing solid that's coming back.
Yeah.
Any kind of game plan or?
Unfortunately, we don't have anything at this time. I have not seen anything that would work well within the current parameters of what our staffing knowledge is or anything like that. So kind of at this point, it would either be like a one-off workshop or a special event, or bringing in a third-party provider to offer something, or it would be at kind of integrated programming with where we ask which instructors feel like for our contract classes, for example, do they feel confident in providing the same or higher level of service to an individual with an intellectual disability or a physical disability, and making that available to people. But I think the initial goal was to have people with intellectual disabilities. But again, we haven't come up with something that would kind of meet that criteria. So if there is something that would be feasible, we're happy to do that. One of the things we'll be looking at is aquatics as we're moving into this session. But one of the major factors will just be staffing. So the recruitment is up now for summer. So if we get a large volume, then we can certainly add on additional classes that would be more targeted towards individuals with disabilities who maybe can't handle a larger class size, for example, or needs a more quiet environment. Then we can look at offering those types of classes. I think aquatics is one of the ones where we have a staff member who has more knowledge and being able to change the class to meet that, those needs. But our other programs don't necessarily have that. I will say our after-school program is kind of the prime example, and day camp is another prime example of where we go, I would venture to say, above and beyond any other program to make sure that anyone, regardless of the disability or accommodations that they're requesting, that we keep them in the program and find a way to ensure that they are having just as an enjoyable time as the rest of the participants.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just more so just wanted to know that something is going on in the back end. You know, you guys are trying, just because it's never mentioned until I mentioned something. So that's all I wanted to know. So as long as you guys are trying, that's fine. You know, I'll try on my end with, you know, the providers that my son has and see if they might be able to work with the city and, you know, come up with something.
Maybe as a suggestion, we can put it as part of the programs that we will be discussing, because technically it's another demographic, right? So which means it's just another demographic that we will be brainstorming on, and that'll be great so that we can share, and then we'll ask the team what the capacity is and what we can do. So, and it's not any different from the other programs that we probably will be thinking about as well.
Yeah, and I agree with Matthew. I think probably a workshop or a third party coming in and doing it probably would be the best thing, because they'll have the training and knowledge to do something like that. So, okay.
So in terms of the agenda item for next meeting then, can we just have a separate line on how to address the needs of a neurodiverse community? And sort of attach that to the data that we're looking at that breaks out the different programs available by age group. I think part of the discussion we had earlier this year too was offering training to staff so that they are more aware of how to understand the needs of this community. Is it possible? Do we have the budget for it? Things like that.
Sorry, can you repeat that last item?
So I believe we had talked about bringing in a vendor or someone who is knowledgeable about working with people with invisible or physical or mental disabilities. Has that made its way to being scheduled? Are we still thinking about doing it?
Sure. If I'm remembering the conversation, would be a consultant to come in, as I think is what was mentioned, to come up with a plan. We can certainly add that into the budget request for this upcoming fiscal year, but unfortunately we are very tight on everything this current fiscal year. But we can certainly add that.
I wanted to get some more thoughts from, and I can't remember his name, the gentleman.
Andy
here.
Shoup? Andy Shoup?
Andy?
Uh-huh.
I believe he said he had just recently gone to some events where they had discussed, you know, having activities for those on the spectrum and whatnot. So I was kind of hoping he'd kind of have a little more input or something. So I don't know if he, like I said, maybe he's doing it and I'm just not in the loop. But
Sure.
I don't know if he might be able to provide some information on what he's
Yeah.
done or suggestions he could start working on.
Yeah, why don't I have him connect and we'll set up a meeting with the three of us and kind of delve into those a little bit more in detail.
Again, I don't expect like a whole program or anything, just one, you know, a little something, and then maybe expand from that if it, you know, goes good. But
Maybe just one question. I know federal government has made cuts on any budget regarding any diversity efforts and all that, how does that affect local government?
So I will say I am not the best person to ask. I think our city manager's office would be more attuned as to what that effect would be. I will say from my knowledge, there is no immediate impact to us.
Okay.
We do not receive a large number of federal funding. Most of it is from sales tax and the other different local revenue sources
Oh, nice.
and/or county or state revenue sources. Or grant funding. We do have some CDBG funding that we receive for our after-school program and our sports program. It's very minimal. And so potentially that could be impacted if there was any new direction provided as far as continuing that funding for future fiscal years or stopping it at any point. But I don't, none of what we do kind of falls within the parameters as set forth so far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's not necessarily advertised as such. But I guess the short answer to your question is no, there's no immediate impact.
Thank you for the insight.
Any other discussion about the work plan? Okay. Adrian, do we have any public comments on the discussion item?
We do not.
Okay. The time for public comment on this item is now closed. Moving on to commissioner reports. Each commissioner may address the Community Services Commission and public on matters of general concern, of general information and/or concern. This is also the time for commissioners to report on conferences and/or meetings they have attended. So let us start with Commissioner Lotz.
I got nothing.
Okay. Moving on to Commissioner Rodriguez.
Just probably the most recent was the Lunar New Year celebration. I think it's always been great. It's been always festive and fun. No bad thing to say or no comments. I think it's very telling of San Gabriel as a population, so it's great.
Vice Chair Barantes.
This is more of a concern, and I don't know if that's something we can publish in the newsletter. My son takes the bus, and a ton of cars never stop when the stop sign's out all the time. They look at it as they're driving by and just. And I obviously I can't say all the cars that are driving by are San Gabriel residents. We live in one street that kind of, it's a little thoroughway, like people do a little shortcut through, but I don't know, just to bring more awareness to like, hey, stop signs out on the school bus, you have to stop. Like a lot of people look lost and confused, like, am I stopping? They're like slow rolling it, and just more of a safety issue. I don't even know what else we can do, or if you have any suggestions in terms of that, but.
Sure. So if, after the meeting, if you'd like to either email or we can have a follow-up conversation with regards to kind of the specific area in which it's happening, we can pass it along to PD. I know that they've targeted other areas in the city where there may be some unsafe actions, and they've had different techniques to alleviate that. So potentially they can look into that specific area and see what they can do to prohibit or at least reduce the amount of kind of unsafe travelers within that specific area.
I think there was an article that came out regarding that. For example, strict enforcement of the stop, that they will be ticketed right away. I think there was something that came up maybe 2-3 months ago. So I'm not sure if we can get a hold of that mandate from the government. I think it was traffic. Yeah, it's here. But it was in general because they had to make sure that when the bus stop thing comes out, that everyone has to stop. I think I read it somewhere. I'm not sure if we can get a hold of that or a statement from the enforcers, but if there's any, maybe we can share it in the social media, St.
Yeah,
Gabriel.
Instagram, something just.
That'll be great.
say-
Because, for example, the one example is the detours that happen, and it's been announced on social media, and that's been helpful because recently we've had so much street work. So I guess if there's something like that, it can be, the social media is actually helpful.
So unfortunately, that doesn't fall within our department, but we can certainly connect PD and the PIO together to see what additional outreach they can do.
So I mean, I agree with you, the California rolling stops. I can just, there's not enough time to talk about my displeasure with the traffic patterns in San Gabriel, but I think what falls under a purview, though, are bike lanes, and we don't really spend a lot of time about, sort of how do we make the bike lanes safer, because those bike lanes in Del Mar, they're not protected. And so many people use those bike lanes just as a separate lane. So when I'm on my bike, or whether it's an e-bike or a regular bike, I'm always constantly looking, who's going to cut me now? Who's going to cut me off? Do they even know that you're supposed to share the road with bicyclists? So, and as more people use e-bikes too, maybe we should have a better policy about, are you allowed to have the e-bike on the sidewalk, or are you supposed to use the bike lane? And if you force everyone to the bike lane, maybe there's then enough people who will ask for better protection of the bike lanes, which I feel like is not there yet. Certainly for pedestrians, it doesn't matter. Like, people will just run the stop sign.
We'll have a whole thing with the stop signs too.
Yeah.
Just in general.
But if I don't know, we'll probably have too much for the next agenda, but if we can talk a little bit more about bike usage in the city and how we can make it easier for bicyclists.
Sure. So I will say that also, unfortunately, it seems like it falls within our department, but it doesn't.
Okay.
But that would likely be a joint effort between Public Works and the police department. So I can see if there's any additional information or context that they can provide the commission.
Okay. Any other questions about the, I'm sorry, we're at the commission reports. Any other comments? Okay. So in terms of the events that I've attended, so I attended one at the Mission Playhouse, and that was one of the free shows available through the Music Center. Amazing as usual. I thought that was good turnout. And it seemed like the community really had fun. It was a good mix of people, kids, older adults, teenagers, so it seemed like a really good program that really brought the community together.
Which one was this?
So the Music Center has a grant that allows performances at the Mission Playhouse, and people can attend for free. I don't know, I think Rebecca Diablo was the one that came out a couple weeks ago, so I thought that was really fun. The second thing the second event I attended was a Lunar Festival, and I thought the Lunar Festival was great. I was very happy to see that the food trucks had their prices listed, and the food trucks that did not have the prices listed, I don't want to use the word scalp lightly, but those prices were excessive, There's a reason why they're hiding those prices, because by the time, again, you get through that line, then it's like boba for $12, when you're like, okay. Yeah, so I thank you so much for suggesting to the vendors to just display the prices. That's all we're asking. So in terms of turnout, because traditionally for San Gabriel, the Lantern Festival is at the end of the Lunar New Year cycle. So now obviously it was at the very beginning. So was there any change in terms of attendance? Did it affect anything at all?
Rebecca would be able to advise more on that, and I don't know if it would be more helpful for both Rebecca and the commission we can bring back a full report at the next commission meeting. But I don't have attendance numbers off the top of my head.
Only because it's such an expensive event for the commission, for the Community Services Department. So.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. We don't have attendance numbers for that event. I was here throughout the weekend, and it was very full. It was a very full event. This was the first year that we worked with World Journal Los Angeles. We've not yet had a debrief. We actually have that coming up on Wednesday with them. And so we'll see if they have any sense of attendance numbers. They also host the Monterey Park event, so they're familiar with what they draw at that event. This was, I'll say our event was smaller scale than I've not been to the Monterey Park event, but I understand that ours is a little smaller scale. So we didn't have any feedback, though, in terms of the date. I will say one of the things that I'm suggesting for next year, we haven't yet set the date for next year, but one of the things that I'm suggesting is that we don't hold it as close to the Lunar New Year, the date of the actual Lunar New Year. Reason being, World Journal was off that day, they were closed that day, and it was like the week of the event, and so it was a little bit challenging, all of those kind of last-minute tasks that have to happen right before the event were challenging, if you will. But any other feedback that you have is welcome. We'll definitely share that with them. We heard good things from the businesses in the Mission District about the layout, more preferable than it was last year in the parking lot. So any other feedback you have is welcome. And like Matthew said, if we want to bring that forward at a future meeting, we can definitely do that.
I agree. The Monterey Park event is very big. And they were able to get Disney to sponsor. How do we get that?
So I will tell you, I was in probably 6 months worth of meetings with our mayor. He pushed hard for Disney. He has a daughter who loves Disney, and he pushed hard to get Disney here. World Journal reached out to Disney, and they, because of the timing of our event, their Lunar New Year things were all wrapped up by that point, and so they weren't able to come out and do that. So that may be something that we consider in the future as well. And I will just say, I know you mentioned the cost of this event. While the budget has $30,000 allocated, we actually don't pay World Journal to do it. They get sponsorships, so that they actually brought in, there were various other costs that we had, but they were all kind of safety, city related rather than event costs. So in terms of budget, it's a very large scale event to put on, but it's not a huge budget item for us, so fortunately.
So we have some savings from that then, since they're able to sponsor the whole thing.
There were a few things that we did this year. We had different barricades. If you were here, they're the Meridian barricades that we rented for the end caps of the street, which were very expensive, but hopefully in the future, the city will look at purchasing those, so we won't have that huge rental cost. We also provided security guards at the Mission parking lot because it was such an impact on Mission Church because of their services that are held throughout the weekend. So we provided security guards so that parking was limited to those who were attending the Mission. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, and our team ambassadors, would you like to share any reports you might have on conferences and or meetings that you attended, or any events that you attended in the city?
So I also recently attended the Lunar New Year Festival. It was very fun. The thing that caught my attention the most as soon as I walked in was the decorations. I love the lights, and I hope there's more of them next year because I'm not sure if they were there last year, but yeah, they were very captivating and they were very nice to see, and it was just very pleasing, aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, I definitely really enjoyed the event, and I had several friends go as well, and they all really enjoyed the event as well. We went on the park rides and we got food and we went to different vendors, and it was just very fun overall.
I also attended the Lunar New Year event, and I would suggest maybe more unique vendors because a lot of the vendors were similar, so it did increase competition for them, and there wasn't a lot of variety. A lot of them were just fried food. Yeah, and maybe vendors that didn't include so much carbon because it smelled a lot like smoke and a lot of people did comment on that. Like I went with my family and friends, and they didn't want to go near because it wasn't good to inhale. And I would just say maybe to include more attractions like music throughout the plays, and maybe like some like dragon dancers or like that aren't just performing at a single time, but maybe throughout, like just walking around. Because I know little kids like to point at that and like get excited at that. So maybe just to add more decor.
Great, thank you for that. So, if we can somehow incorporate the suggestions of the teen ambassadors into the minutes, so maybe next time, we go around to planning this event again, and as you work with the sponsor, we can talk a little bit more about improving the layout, improving the type of entertainment that is offered to the community during that event. So you could just look back on these minutes and be able to go through those comments. Okay, so speaking of comments, staff comments. Staff members have the opportunity to address the commission and public on matters of general information and or concern.
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the next regular Community Services Commission meeting will be held on Monday, April 7th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Information regarding matters to be considered at each meeting will be available on the Friday before the Community Services Commission meeting on the city's website at www.sangabrielcity.com. This regular meeting is now adjourned at 8:25 p.m.